I didn't have to address any of the issues that I was having. I didn't have to figure out what was wrong with me or where it was all stemming from, because I had that magic pill, and it was always on me. No matter where I went, if I was at work, at home, I would always have a little capsule that would have my Xanax and be like, no matter how bad I feel, I can take that, and then I'm feeling nothing.
I also wonder if some of the things we go through as adults, or maybe even an addiction, has anything to do with certain things that young. Not necessarily there was any trauma experienced, but our own personal fears as children, that could lead to that. But I'm excited to get into all of that with you today. And I'm really excited to have Matt Villegas here with us.
Me too. It's been a long time since I was originally planned to be on here.
I've been working on, and then, life and chaos, everything just kind of gets in the mix of it. So I'm glad to finally have you in studio. And you are not only a close family friend, but a BFR alumni. So we have a lot of amazing things to talk about. And your story is inspiring to me. And that's why I feel like this would just be a good place to be able to share your experiences and what you've gone through, because we have a lot of different listeners and going through all sorts of different walks of life. And I honestly feel, Matt, you are the perfect example of addiction does not discriminate. You were a sheriff.
Yes.
For many years.
For almost 14 years.
How old were you when you, tell us about
26.
that journey.
Well, growing up, my dad was a sheriff. I never really wanted to be a sheriff. I was like, hell no, it just doesn't look like, he's happy or that much fun. Plus, especially like in high school where I started doing weed, I was like, okay, no, I don't think I could have that clean life as a sheriff. But at the time I was with the girl I was with, I wanted to get married, and I was 26, but I was like, I got to have a career. I can't just go from job to job. I'm like, all right, I'll take the test. So I took the test, passed the written. Okay, now you go to physical. Passed the physical. And then I really started taking it seriously. Okay, I got to make changes. Can't smoke any more weed. Can't be hanging around people that are doing stuff like that. And then went to the academy, and that was extremely stressful because I hadn't done anything that was classwork or classroom oriented since high school. And I didn't really care for high school. I just don't like sitting down, not being able to talk, not being able to move, and listening to other people. So, I did the academy, and you can fail out every single day. So it's each day could be your last day in the academy.
Oh, wow.
But made it through, then did the sheriff's, and it was definitely a culture shock for me. I went from private Catholic schools, private Catholic high school, didn't really experience the whole gangs and everything. So I remember getting the tour of the jail, because everybody starts off in the jail, and you just see everyone with tattoos on the face. These guys are murderers, these ones are, everything that they're there for. And it was kind of oh my God, this is crazy. But in that job, it's crazy how, I wouldn't necessarily say brainwash, but you just get kind of turned to where everything is turned off. You're just numb to anything. I mean, I've seen overdoses, I've seen people suicides, I've given CPR to people that they're already gone, but we keep doing it until paramedics arrive. Blood, fights, riots. I mean, I saw things that personally I don't think any human being should have to witness, but it's not like you get time to process that. You still have a job to do. So, you go to this call and, oh my God, this person's gone. They're dead. This person overdosed. This one committed suicide. There was this huge riot, all these blood and fights. And then it's oh, look at the hour. You still have to go do your sign-offs. There's no excuse. There's really no time to process. It's what what did I just witness? It's like, no, you got a job to do, turn it off. And so that's basically what I did, was I just became this person that was always numb. I was never scared. I was never worried, no matter, even going out in public, I wouldn't see someone be like, oh my God. It didn't bother me.
What made you go into the prison system? Like, did you have a choice, or is that kind of just where you...
No, it's with sheriffs, you usually, when you go in, you have to do at least 2 years before you can qualify to go out to patrol. And at that time, I was like, wow, I already got my weekends off. I have this most amazing schedule. We get paid the same. We have the same powers. So there's really nothing different. And I was like, do I really want to give up my weekends and go out to another training program that, you can fail out? So I was like, yeah, I'll just stay in the jail. And, you get used to the people you work with too.
Right.
Especially when you're trusting all of your coworkers with your life. It's kind of like you build these bonds really quickly. And it's like, oh, I have fun, working with them. When you're doing 12 to 16 hour shifts at a time, it's like you got to be able to at least have a little bit of fun and trust the people that you're working with. So I had already built so many relationships with my workers that it's like, no, I really enjoyed it. And then, you built a reputation in there as well, amongst the inmates, to where they give you a certain amount of respect, and you have a certain amount of control, and it's kind of like, all right. And they always recommend that you stay in the jail for a little bit, because when you go out to patrol, a majority of the people that you're going to see out there, you'll recognize from the inside.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, this guy's usually known for having drugs on him, or this one is on parole. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, but I enjoyed working in the jail for the most part until later on. Once things started changing, I always had issues sleeping, even before I became a sheriff, but it just got worse after that, especially when you're working nights. You're awake when everyone's sleeping, and then you get off 7:30 in the morning or 11:30 in the morning, you go home, try to sleep with all the daylight and people moving around. And there were so many times where I'd be up for 2 or 3 days at a time with no sleep. And that became extremely frustrating, because I'd go to the doctors, like, okay, we're going to put you on Ambien. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try a higher dosage. That doesn't work. And they could never tell me what was wrong, why I couldn't sleep. And I could never shut my mind off. And so even when I was taking the Ambien, sometimes I'd fall asleep, but it'd be for like an hour, and I'd wake up, and one of the side effects is you can kind of hallucinate. And when I'd be sometimes taking 2 pills, it's like even stronger. So it wasn't fun. And It was just really frustrating that the doctors could never figure out what was going on or how to fix it. Like, just scratching their head. And when you have a doctor scratching their head, it's like, well, So, and I think that's part of where my anxiety came from. I remember the first time I had an anxiety attack, I'd gotten off shift, and I had already been up for about a day and a half. And a buddy of mine, we went to Disneyland, but we stopped in Glendale. And we went out drinking that night, drinking hard. Came back, I fell asleep for maybe an hour, woke up, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. And it just got to me. And it was just so frustrating. And I'm thinking, God, we still have like another hour to drive. There's no way I can drive. And then all of a sudden I started getting the tightness in the chest and feeling the tingles in the arm. And it's like, what the hell's going on? And my buddy, he's just like, you're hungover. And I'm like, I'm not hungover. I know what a hangover feels like. This is not a hangover. And then I started getting really warm and couldn't control my breathing. And I just started freaking out from there. And it's like, I've experienced stuff before, but Nope. It just got to the point where I felt like I was going to black out. I remember going to the bathroom like, whoa, okay. And then, what's going on? And my buddy was on the phone with his wife, who was a nurse. And he's like, oh, this might be happening. And I was like, dude, I got to go to the ER. He's like, no. I was like, dude, either take me to the ER or I'm calling 911 because this isn't right. And I remember he's driving me to the ER, and I stick my head out the window, started, getting some fresh air and breathing. But I went there and I said, yeah, I'm getting tightness in chest. I don't know what's going on. They take you immediately. So they said, yeah, it looks like you had a panic attack. And I'd never experienced that before. I always used to take, like ephedrine and stuff like that, or pre-workout. I loved that, tweaker or whatever feeling you would get. And so it's like, what is going on? From that point on, I could not handle anything with caffeine.
Wow.
Every single time that my heart would rate a little bit faster, this was always my checking my pulse. And I just became obsessive with that, to where any time that I felt a tingle in the arm or a little tightness in the chest, I immediately went to the worst. And so the doctor started giving me Xanax and then an antidepressant. And it's like that was the fix. It wasn't like, where's all this coming from?
Right.
And I'd seen a few therapists, but, finding the right therapist is very important. You have to kind of click with them, get a connection. Because the two that I had before, it'd be like sometimes, I'm like, really? You're dozing off? I'm talking about like all this personal stuff. And, they weren't really giving me any recommendations. Like they would hear me talk for 45 minutes to an hour and be like, okay. And then I was seeing a psychiatrist at the same time, and it'd be like a 15-minute, how are these meds working? How are these meds working? They're not really. Okay, we're going to up the dosage a little bit. Before I went into treatment, I was getting prescribed 120 bars of Xanax a month.
Oh my gosh.
So it's 4 pills a day. And I remember before I went into treatment, I was already convincing myself like, I'm taking myself off. I'm only doing, I still have like 15 pills left at the end of the month. Like that's still 105 pills that you're taking. So it's like, yeah, maybe it was less, but Xanax was just my safety blanket. I didn't have to address any of the issues that I was having. I didn't have to figure out what was wrong with me or where it was all stemming from, because I had that magic pill. And it was always on me. No matter where I went, if I was at work, at home, I would always have a little capsule that would have my Xanax and be like, no matter how bad I feel, I can take that, and then I'm feeling nothing. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling relaxed. And wow, I'm going back. I'm like, didn't you originally ask me how I got into the sheriffs and it got to this?
Well, you answered question number 2 anyway. So.
Yeah.
With the Xanax, I mean, was it primarily Xanax? Was there any other substances involved, and were you still working at the sheriff's?
Yes.
Or I'm at the jail?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So I was on Xanax for about 10 years. And, when I was looking it up online, it's like, yeah, you're supposed to be on it for maybe 2 or 3 months. A lot of the times it was as needed, but it was being prescribed like, yeah, take 1 2-milligram bar every 4 hours. And it wasn't, I would mess around a little bit with alcohol, but it wasn't like I needed to have a drink. It was more of just like a casual thing while I was doing other stuff. And then it was probably about the past 3 years before I went into recovery. So it was probably like 2018, 2019. And I started messing with edibles. Maybe this can help me go to sleep.
So the Xanax was still not helping you sleep?
No. And I would try to take that. I even tried taking it with alcohol to maybe intense the effects and maybe this will knock me out. And there was something in my system that I wasn't affected by stuff like that. I tell people it was one of my birthdays. When we would go out drinking or do any type of partying, I would always be the last one to pass out or fall asleep. I would never pass out. And then they'd ask me the next day, what happened? And I'd remember everything. And they roofied me on my birthday.
Oh my God. They're like, this will do him. We'll get him to knock out first.
And I was always kind of curious, like, if that would actually knock me out. And it didn't.
Wow.
It made me sick and, throw up, but it didn't knock me out. So there's something built differently in me that stuff just doesn't work. Same thing with pills. I had a history with that as well. That's when I was younger, but my thing is I have an addictive personality. If I do it and I like it, I'm going to keep doing it. And the dentist had given me some Vicodin, and I loved it. It's that first feeling like, God, I'm relaxed, I'm happy. But if I was up and moving around, it had me like energetic. And then it got to the point where I kind of enjoyed going to the dentist because I was like, ooh, I'm going to get some Vicodin. You're going to
get prescription.
Exactly.
You go to the dentist. You're like, oh, I have a toothache constantly. You're
yep. Like,
frequent flyer at the dentist.
And I got traumatized when I was younger, so I hated going to the dentist. I was going there for a cavity one day, and they started drilling, but they never shot me up with the Novocaine.
Oh, my goodness.
So I was a little kid, and I was like, and they're like, oh, let's wait for the Novocaine to kick in. And I don't know how they got confused with that, but they didn't shoot me up. So finally I got that final second drill. I hopped up out of the chair and ran into the lobby. And from that point on, I always had this fear. I never wanted to go there. So I wouldn't do, checkups or anything or get cleaning. Is basically the only time I'd go to the dentist was when I was in so much pain that I had to go.
Right.
And that led to a lot of issues as well, is that my teeth were horrible. I mean, they would break. They were yellow, dark. I hated to smile. I would look for a reason to stay serious. And that wasn't how I was. I love joking around. I love having a good time. And I look back on pictures and it's like, this is my smile, because I never wanted to show my teeth. And that really messed with me. And that was part of my depression is, I always wanted to get married, have kids. And I'm like, damn, is this why, girls don't want to be with me? Because of my teeth, my smile, they're embarrassed. And, that kind of led to when I started using cocaine. I never wanted to try it because I knew my addictive personality, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to love it. And I was drunk one night and somebody offered me a little bump, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And like, just do a little bit. And I was like, when you're doing alcohol, you're not thinking straight. So I did a little bump, and then I was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, oh, but you got to do it on the other side too. You got to even it up. I was like, is that like a rule? So I did another bump, and then I was like, ooh, okay. And it got me happy. You see the Dave Chappelle thing, cocaine's a hell of a drug, and it's a hell of a drug. So from that point on, I did it a week after that as well. And this is all while I'm a sheriff too. So that plays into my head like, God, I'm a hypocrite. Look at the that I'm doing, and I'm supposed to be upholding the law. And it got to the point where I was buying probably about a quarter ounce a week. And I think another part was that I'm always a people pleaser. I felt kind of cool that I had like the best coke, and you get to be like Oprah on cocaine. Like, you want a bump, you want a bump, you want a bump. You're just giving them out. So it wasn't like all my use, but I was always on coke. There was never a time where I wasn't. It'd be out of boredom, or it'd be like, oh, movies would be better, bowling would be better, football games would be better, golf. And I remember when I was in treatment, they're like, oh, you got to be careful when you get home of the places that, you used to do it. I'm like, where the hell am I going to go then? I literally did it everywhere. Every family member's house, every bathroom. So that was kind of stressful coming back.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Right.
I don't want to be, there's no place that I could go that you basically have to be like under my kitchen table. That'd be the only place that I haven't done coke.
Right. What led you to being ready to do a program? Like, what was your breaking point for you?
Part of it was suicide. I got to the absolute low where I just didn't give a shit anymore. I guess they call it getting a case of the fuckets, where I wanted to die. I was like, okay, I'm not getting a girlfriend. My job is just driving me absolutely nuts. Here's the shit that I'm doing. That there was a lot of depression going on from home, from work, from just all aspects, to where I just felt like there was really no ending. There was no bright future for me. And so it would almost be daily that I'd be thinking about killing myself. And I'd be like, okay, I don't want anybody to blame themselves, so I have to make it look like an accident. I can't just shoot myself, or I can't do this. So I think that's part of where the drugs came in as well, is like, oh, maybe I could accidentally overdose. So it's like each time I would kind of push my limits of like, oh, whoa, I did way too much, but not enough to kill me. And so I had an episode where I was actually gonna call it quits. I'd taken my phone, I deleted all my pictures, all my contacts. I mean, this thing was like, I'm done. No one's gonna find anything on my phone. And it just hit to where I just broke down emotionally. And it was hard, but my dad is actually the one who stopped me. I remember that night so clearly, that my mom, before she went to bed, she would normally send a text message, or she would leave her phone out somewhere, not in her room, and she said goodnight, and I responded goodbye. And she would never get up and check her phone again, but for some reason that night, something told her, go check your phone. And so she told my dad came out, and I was in the driveway. And there's been some rocky things at home with the family, and I was just nonstop crying. I had hit rock bottom. And he was like, oh, it's okay, and we've all been there. And I said, we've all been here. And I showed him the gun, and he's like, oh God. So my mom tried to come out, and he's like, get back in the house, get back in the house. And I remember he kept telling me, please don't do it. Let a father hold his son one more time. And that just got to me. And so after a few minutes, released the magazine, racked out the chamber, opened up the door, and just got into his arms, to where I was just like, holy like, I got this close. And from that point on, I think it was I was open about it, so I would talk with my cousins about it. And it was after my birthday in July of 21. One of my cousins, who had some issues with addiction in the past as well. I always kept my coke separate, like a secret from him, and the other members would be like, oh yeah, I have coke. And so he got worried, between me being suicidal and doing coke, that not a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one morning I'm out in the family room. My mom and dad come out. My mom's like, we need to talk. And they said one of my cousins let their mom know that I was doing cocaine. Immediately denied. Like, no? Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you? And I was just so tired of lying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a full-time job to lie.
Right.
And manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
For the whole time that because I was doing coke for about 2 years. And, you get the sniffles or all the time. And I was like, oh man, my allergies. I've never had allergies. We were getting to the point where they got me a machine to like clean my sinuses. And I was like, oh, there's all this mold in the jail.
Oh my God.
And I'm a pretty good liar. I mean, it's not something to be proud of, but
yeah.
I have a master's degree in bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm doing it. I was still pissed. I mean, I was furious. Mm-hmm. In my head, I'm like, and I even, told my mom immediately, I was like, I'm going to find out which cousin snitched on me and I'm going to beat the shit out of them. Mm-hmm. That was my attitude. Mm-hmm. That was my rage of like, they're
right.
not as innocent, as well. They do their things.
Right.
But it wasn't about them. It was about me. And so, yeah, my mom was like, so we talked with Cheree and she's got a bed for you. And I even tried to get out of it then. I was like, well, I'm already doing, better. I'm hardly doing any coke anymore. And my Xanax, I'm not doing as much as that, She's like, oh. Mm-hmm. She was actually going to like let me slide. And I have a feeling that she probably called you and you're like, he's full of shit.
Yeah.
So
probably.
So yeah, we end up going and they're like, okay, let's pack a bag and let's go. So I was like, my initial attitude was fine. I'll go. I'll do my 7 days or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Come home, go on with my life. But just absolutely pissed at my parents, just pissed at everyone. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I remember I was doing my intake and it was weird for me. At the time I wasn't ready to stop. I was having fun. The only time that I was happy was when I was high. Mm-hmm. But I was a completely different person. I look back on pictures and I'm just dark circles and, between edibles and then having the THC pens, my Xanax, the Coke. I mean, it got to the point to where I wasn't sure if I was having a dream and something really happened or if it was real life.
Right.
And, you get to do the stupid messaging of, drunk texting or whatever, but mine was like on a whole new level. And then I got to the point where I was deleting messages. So when I would finally pass out, I'd wake up like, I don't remember any of that. So, yeah, a few people played victims to my bullshit with that. But, yeah, we get into treatment, and I'm like, okay, I just gotten a fresh refill on my Xanax. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going here. This is for cocaine. And, I didn't know what to expect. As a sheriff, you hear people going off to programs, and I just think of like this huge place with a bunch of like tweakers walking around, scratching their neck. And it's the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. It's just everything is about making you feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
So, it was the first 2 days, it was hard. You guys took my cell phone, even things like cologne, you couldn't have. And I was like, God, people like drink cologne or whatever but, just always, and then having like a bedtime. And I've always had the attitude, I don't like anyone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
If you tell me to do something, I'm going to do the opposite. But if you ask me, so it was definitely a little weird. And then even having my stuff searched. I mean, I've done easily over 1,200, searches in my career where I'm going through everything, including the person. And I was just completely pissed off the whole time. Like, okay, how many more days of this? How many more days? And I remember when you arrived, I think it was about 2 days after, and you called me in the office. I'm like, am I in trouble? And you're like, so I was talking with your mom, and she would also like you to get off your Xanax. I was about to lose my I was like, really? I'm already here in this situation that I don't want to be in, and now you want me to give up my baby? You want me to quit Xanax as well? I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go through any withdrawals, because I've gone cold turkey when I was waiting for a refill, worst days of my life. So I was like, if I'm going to have to go through this, I'd rather it be here. So, like, we have your permission to destroy your pills? Yeah. And it just seemed like everything was happening at once. I ended up getting an infection in my gums while I was there. And I remember Marissa? Yeah, she was like my little mommy there. I mean, I'm probably twice her age, but she's like, oh, I feel so bad. And, we would always joke around that I blew up like Hitch in the movie once he eats the fish. I'm walking around and I can't even talk. I'm in so much pain. I'm here giving up cocaine and Xanax. I don't want to be here. And
I need to go to the dentist.
Yeah. So I ended up going to the ER, and they gave me some antibiotics, and it slowly went down. But, I remember talking with the therapist that you guys have there, and she's like, are you considering a program? I said, fuck no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing my 7 days, and I'm going home. I'm doing my life. That's it. Like, okay. But then, once you start getting all this stuff out of your system that's not fogging your mind, you can think a little more clearly. It's kind of like, okay, in reality, what's going to happen? I'm going to go home in 7 days. I'm going to go back to the same. I hadn't fixed what was going on in my mind, so I'm going to need Xanax again, because I didn't know how to deal with anything. No one had ever taught me anything of how to deal with my anxiety without popping a pill.
Right.
So you arrived again, and they're like, yeah, Cheree wants to talk to you. And I remember the people on the couch, they're like, oh, she's going to try to get you to a program. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went in there, and I don't think it took much convincing. You asked me, what I thought about it, and I said originally I'd probably say no. But, there were the worries of, how much is this going to cost? And you worked your magic, and it's like any excuse that I could come up with. Well, I don't know if I can afford that. Okay, got this done. Got a scholarship. Well, it's like you caught my bull because it wasn't your first rodeo. So you're like, yeah, we can get you there on Friday. So 2 more days. Wow, that's fast. She works quick. And yeah, that was definitely another experience. I never thought that I'd be going off to a program, but I knew that I had to figure out how to do my anxiety. Every single day I thought I was going to die. And that's where they were working with me, where did some EMDR. Okay, think of a bad experience you went through. Where do you feel it? It's like here. And they're like, okay, let's go to a good experience. Where do you feel it? I feel it here. So it's like, okay, not every thing is a bad feeling. It can associate with something good. And I remember one of the things that the counselor over there told me, he was like, what's your big worry when you have an anxiety attack? I said, well, then I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and no matter how many anxiety attacks I'd gone through and I came out on the other end okay, anxiety's that you keep saying, what if? You know, like, oh no, you're going to be fine. But what if this time it's not just anxiety and you're really going through something and you're not going to address it because you think it's just anxiety? So it's just that constant reminder of like, you know, what if you die this time? What if you die this time? And he said, you don't have your phone, but feel free to look it up. Statistically, no one's ever died from an anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, no matter how bad it gets and how bad you feel, just keep telling yourself you're not going to die. And it was amazing how much that actually helped.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that and working with like different grounding techniques of, you know, control your breathing, and even something as taking a walk. Before, the brain and the mind is so powerful, you can convince yourself of anything. For the whole time that I was doing coke, I never worked out because I was like, oh, if my heart rate goes up, that's it. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't do any type of lifting, exercise. I remember my dad always telling me, go take a walk. And I'm like, no, because I'm afraid I'm going to pass out.
If
and
your
no one's
heart rate goes. Yeah.
Exactly. So I actually ended up getting back into working out while I was there. I was like, okay, that's not too bad. And it's been, since I left there, I haven't had an anxiety attack. You know, once you learn that you don't need the pill, once you learn like different grounding techniques, and so much of it is actually in your mind.
Yep.
You know, it's, you don't worry about it anymore.
I'm curious to know, how's your sleep?
Amazing. While I was over there, because I went to Fresno to my time, and the first couple of days I slept horrible. You know, the first couple of days they had me rooming with someone who was a sleepwalker, and I'm especially when I'm trying to go to sleep, I just hear everything. Mm-hmm. And he also liked to eat in his sleep and vape in his sleep. So I'd be like trying to relax, and then he would shoot up out of like a dead sleep and be like, are you kidding me? and then he would hit his vape and then all of a sudden just crash back down. And I remember trying to talk to him and he wouldn't respond. And then other times he would get up, walk around, he'd go grab some food like ice cream or cereal, soda, and he'd eat it and go back to bed. And then the next day he wouldn't remember any of it. He's like, oh yeah, I do that sometimes. So I'm like, I already have a horrible time sleeping, and I got this guy who does all this stuff in the middle of the night. You know, you're trying to sleep and you're smelling like cotton candy and Rockstar vape. And it's like, oh my God.
Oh man, and rehab life, huh?
Yes. And it was at the point where I almost walked out.
Yeah.
I remember they're like, okay, you know, you can stay out in the living room for a little while. And I had an anxiety attack. Mm-hmm. It was like, I'm not sleeping. Here I am. I'm in this place away from my family. And I went in to the office, and we're talking with the night staff. And they're like, we know you don't want to leave. And I was like, I don't. But if I'm going to be feeling this, I'd rather be at home.
Right.
And they're like, well, just give it a little more night. And I was waiting to hear from one of the doctors on getting me something for the sleep. It was like Doxepin. And so they were very, very patient with me. Mm-hmm. You know, usually because I arrived and I was still technically on detox, they're like, you don't have to go to any of the programs. But I'm like, no, let's go. You know, I need to learn how to deal with all this crap I'm dealing with. And so I went to all the programs, but they were like, you know what, once you sit this one out, try to get some sleep. And then once they got me my own room, I was like, yes.
Much better. How long ago? So how long have you been sober now?
Actually, as of today, it's 2 years, 8 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and time flies.
Right. time flies when you're having fun.
It does. And, you know, that was one of the important things when I got back was I had the fear of, you know, okay, can I go to a Niner game? I have season tickets. So I'm like, oh, I remember going to Niner games, going to the porta potty, do some Coke, drink a few beers, and then sneaking it into the game. I was like, is that going to be triggersome? You know, I was afraid of all the triggers.
Isn't it interesting how, because I remember having all those triggers too, like once it's almost like once you like face those triggers and actually do it, it's like that first time's always hard. Like I remember going to Yosemite, I used to try to withdraw so many times at my cabin. And once I got sober, it's like I'm like, I can't have my favorite place in the world to be a trigger place for me. Like that's supposed to be my safe place, you know? But then you face it, you overcome it, and then it's, you know, now it just becomes part of the past type deal.
And it makes the next location you go to easier.
Right. Right.
You know, I remember sneaking Coke into Disneyland. That and edible mints. I know.
I'm just kidding.
It's like going off to the bathroom, you know, do a few bumps, you know, flush the toilet, and then, you know, so it makes the noise, and be like, all right, let's go on the Buzz Lightyear ride and shoot some lasers. And so it's like, okay, went to the Niner game. Wow, you know, I had fun going and playing golf. It's like, okay, I could do golf and not have to drink, not have to have a beer with the guys, not have to do a bump or smoke. And so it's kind of like, okay, let's do the next one and the next one. And then just so on to where you're like, wow, I can go to a family event. I mean, family events, my family loves their wine. And their beers, you know, shotgunning. We're known for, you know, shotgunning, and you know, I was the champ, so it was hard for me to hand over my title. But you know, in the beginning, everybody was very cautious, and I appreciated it. They're like, "Oh, you know, is it okay?" I said, "Yeah, it doesn't bother me." I said, "You throw out a bag of Coke, and we might be talking different, but I've never had that connection with alcohol where it was like, God, I need it."
Right. But it feels good to just live.
It does.
You know, to be able to go in those environments and honestly feel like you're just living and you're okay. You're comfortable with it.
And
you know?
I never have to worry about, oh, am I going to get pulled over? Did I have too much? Am I going to have a hangover the next day? So much of it is just habit. I remember I went golfing with my cousins, and then we went to a brewery here in Hollister for some lunch, and my drink of choice is Arnold Palmer. So first they're ordering their beers, you know, figuring out which one they want, and then I get an Arnold Palmer, and then the waitress walks away and they're like, God, that sounds refreshing. I was like, it is. And they're like, I didn't really even want a beer, but I remember, you know, if I went out with my buddies, it wasn't like, what kind of iced tea do I want? It's like, I don't really feel like drinking, but I'm going to order a beer. It's just habit. Whether I wanted it or not, I'm going to order it.
Right.
And then, okay, that one was kind of good. You know, after that first one, it's just like, okay, then I'll have another beer and another beer. And then that leads to all the other stuff. Yeah.
What a journey you've been on. I mean, what advice do you give, especially people that are in law enforcement because there's so many people that it hits and that are in the same situation that you were in currently. What advice do you have for them?
Part of my thing with that was I felt so ashamed. You know, I felt like a piece of like, I'm a sheriff, I'm wearing the badge, but I'm doing coke. You know, I'm drinking, I'm smoking weed. You have to address your mental health. It took me so long where I had so many things that bothered me as a sheriff, but I felt like that was the job. You have to be tough. You have to be solid. You can't be vulnerable because that's almost weakness. It's not weakness. You have to address it. I had Googled how many police officers have issues with addiction. It's like 7 out of 10. It may not be like cocaine, but alcohol and other substances. So addiction doesn't just select certain people.
Right.
It's like cancer. It can hit anyone. Addiction will hit anyone. And if you don't address your mental health, it's going to lead to addiction for sure. If you don't find an outlet, a way to decompress of all the stuff that you go through, law enforcement has it so difficult. They're not firemen that everyone loves. It's pretty much everyone hates cops. There's few people that respect, and they think, oh, cops are just this way. You have no idea what they go through. Oh, I would have done this. No, you wouldn't. They train you that action is faster than reaction. You know what you're going to do. So I have to wait for you to do it, and then I have that little bit of time to react. And I know that they've taken other people and they put them through, little scenarios where, oh, what would you do? And it's like they would shoot immediately, or they would do this. And so going back, don't wait till it's too late. If you were having thoughts or issues, you're not the only one. You're not alone. People don't always voice it or share it because they do take it like, oh, I'm being weak. How come this guy, he can still do his job and not be affected? But, am I really weak-minded? Am I, being a little about it? And talk to someone. If you don't talk to someone else in law enforcement, I think it's easier to talk to someone else who's in law enforcement because they can kind of understand.
Right.
Where, it was difficult for me to go to someone in the family and be like, I don't want you to know what I witnessed. Kind of like the ignorance is bliss.
Right.
I can't be like, oh yeah, this is what I had to deal with today. But don't hold it in. There are other ways of dealing with it that don't involve you screwing yourself up.
Right.
Everything happens for a reason. I think everything happened at the right time for me, because a year prior I would have been like, hell no, I'm not going to any therapy or I'm not going to any program. And it was just the right time for me. But get help. I remember talking with one of my sergeants, and he used to be in the Army, and he's like, I go to therapy once a week. And that's definitely what I had to do. I've stayed in therapy since I left treatment. And it's weekly. It's, sometimes you just need someone else to tell you you're not crazy.
Right.
Your feelings are valid. Sometimes you'll talk to people and they'll be like, really? That's, you're going through that? Or, oh God, why are you acting like that? It's, sometimes you just need that validation.
Right.
So
normalizing therapy, I feel, is definitely something that us as a society needs to be able to do. That you're not going to therapy because there's something wrong with you. You're going to therapy to reassure you that you are a good person, a good parent, a good coworker, whatever it is. It's not something because something's wrong with you. If you're not feeling right about yourself, and like you said, taking care of your mental health. And before it gets to that point, calling a therapist and speaking to someone is taking care of your mental health. That is a good starting point, So, I'm so thankful to have you here today. I mean, your story is amazing, and I'm extremely proud of you.
Thank you.
And
I wouldn't be here without you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did all the hard work, and we're here to support, and that's what we're here for. And we continue to help people, and you're there in an open book for other people to reach out to you if they have questions or going through something and they hear this and feel comfortable contacting you. How can they find you?
Easiest way is probably Instagram. It's Mateo, Mateo 0708.
Perfect.
And the last thing, I know that usually when you do your things, like, what's the one like advice? And there's a song in the very beginning. It said, "A wise man once told me, a year from now, you'll be happy you started today." And I love that, because there's never a point where I'm like, oh man, like, I wish I would have waited at least 2 more months. I had a little more fun and then do it. It was like, God, I'm so happy that I chose to start that day.
Absolutely. I love that.
So yeah, definitely the no regrets. No one's going to be like, oh, I wish I would have been,
waited a couple more months. It's
exactly.
Like my favorite thing is tomorrow never comes.
Yep.
So if you're thinking about it and contemplating it and your mind's there right now, now's the best time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.